What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot. Our month of charity tournaments continues. We have already talked about Warrior Bowl, Rainbow Bowl. Everybody wants to talk about Scott Fish Bowl, and we're going to get there. But before that, I got invited to a new tournament this year, and it's from a friend of the show. It is called Super League. It's from the folks over at Fantasy Now Plus. It is a very, very interesting tournament. If you like scoring, if you like point bonuses, this is the tournament for you. Evan Sather is here with us to talk about that tournament. The draft room is full. Let's get into it. What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, though he has been off the last couple of weeks, Austin Amandolia. Welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, glad to be back. Now, I told you that, I had like friends and family the past 2 weeks, but what really has been happening the past 2 weeks is I've been in the lab cooking up my fantasy baseball team because as of this recording right now, we are tied, my man. You no longer are the fantasy baseball expert at Club Fantasy. I am coming back to take
up the rankings recently. Despite my outfield being absolutely fantastic, we could talk about that off the air, but man, did I do great on outfield. Pitching, not so much, but that's a problem for another day. Austin, I was going to also say, you have missed an eventful 2 weeks, but more importantly, just 2 weeks ago when we had a friend of you and mine, Steve Lawson, on the show, but you were not able to make the show. And Josh and Steve got into a huge argument about Jalen Hurts. It was hilarious, but it was at that moment I was like, I need to get Austin back. I love Josh. I've got to get Austin back. And then last week we had a Warrior Bowl giveaway in honor of Austin, and he couldn't make that show, but we are glad to have you back this week. But hey, 2 weeks off to finally catch me in fantasy baseball. I think that is an acceptable vacation. With us for the second time this season, Evan Sather, but you are here to talk something completely different this time around. But before we get into the actual tournament, introduce yourself, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan Sather. You may have seen me before on this show. This is my third total appearance in 2 years. Tonight, I'm here for what I'm going to let Ryan introduce before, but I am representing Fantasy Now Plus this evening, and I also host Monday Night Mock Drafts on the Optimus Fantasy channel on YouTube. So if you're looking for some Scott Fishbowl mock drafts, I got you covered for that too every single Monday.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys need to get with Evan. He is doing way better on the Scott Fish Bowl mocks than we are. And Evan, it was such an honor to be on that show with you and see that someone who's been on my mock draft show is now hosting their own mock draft show. So that was very cool. Before we get into the mock draft, let's pay a little bit of bills real quick. So I'll get us started, and then I'll let Austin tell you why you should join our Discord. If you guys have not signed up for, what am I pitching here today? I can't even find it anymore. There's too many things in here. Underdog Fantasy yet, make sure you do so. Use promo code WOFF and you will get a $1,000 deposit match and a free first-time deposit. All of that money goes towards helping the folks over at Women of Fantasy Football. We send ladies to the NFL draft. We send it to the combine. If you guys haven't noticed, Club Fantasy and Women of Fantasy Football has their own charity tournament that just got announced today. So if you guys go over to women_of_FF on the Twitter or X machine, you'll be able to see all the details of that tournament that just launched, and you can get signed up for that. Unfortunately, Josh told me very late, so they are not fitting into my mock draft schedule at all, but I'm sure we will have some mock drafts going on for that charity league as well. But Austin, on top of all of this, we also have a Discord that we think more people should join.
Yeah, I think Discord is definitely the place to be if you want to talk, interact with us, get to show us your leagues, get some feedback. Right now, it is all about best ball, and I'm going to tease a little bit because we are going to bring the best ball podcast back this year. And if you're in the Discord and you are posting your teams that you're drafting, you may have an opportunity for us to talk about your team on the best ball show. So all the more reason, but also you just get to be part of another fantasy football community and one that's going to help you get better on a daily basis.
I love it. You'll find the link for the Discord in the description of this video. You'll also find the link for the Underdog Fantasy promo in the description of this video. We are going to talk Super League. I'm going to get this draft started, but a couple of disclaimers real quick. If you have never drafted on Mock It Like It's Hot before or tuned into the show, we do not judge every team. We do not talk about every player because who has that kind of time? I try to fit this show into a tidy hour. So we're going to tell you guys why you should be a part of Super League. But more importantly, we're going to break down all of the interesting things about the league and then more of the interesting picks that happened during the mock draft. I kind of joke the mock draft goes on in the background, but I do like to give credit to the people who have decided to help us out and mock draft us. So to start this thing off, I'm going to mention all the people who are drafting with us while I click the start draft button real quick. It is a 30-second clock. So Evan and Austin, be ready for quick picks. If you auto, it's a mock draft, not the biggest deal in the world, but it is a 30-second clock so we can fit the show in an hour. The draft is now officially started. At the 1 spot is Brock's Gym. Our good friend Gator J is picking from the 2. Steven George at the 3. Justin, is it Bowerly at the 4? I assume that's how the last name is pronounced. Big Game James. Our friend Jamie at the 5. Roto Not at the 6. Tim B at the 7. Austin got the 8. Shia at the 9. Philadelphia, that's Alec in the chat, is at the 10. Vince Mapstone, who won the entry into Warrior Bowl, is picking from the 11. And Evan took the 12. Evan, let's start with, this is a 3rd round reversal tournament. You can talk more about all of the draft settings, but was 3rd round reversal the reason you took the 12?
No, it's not just the only reason why it took the 12. It's mainly because I am a fan of taking 2 picks in a row at the back of the first round as opposed to taking the 1 spot and then waiting a long time for it to come back to me. Plus, the 3rd round reversal kind of makes it a little longer to come back to you if you take the 1 spot. But I don't usually take the 12 spot for tournaments like this, so I wanted to see how well I do from there.
I love it. Now, before we get into Super League itself, I like to start these shows off by talking about the scoring settings, because for the drafters out there who might be watching, but more importantly for the people who might be watching this show to get ready for Super League, let's make sure they know what they're getting themselves into, Evan. So if you are ready, you can go ahead and just kind of take over here. Explain to people the nuances of the scoring when it comes to Super League. And I believe you have the scoring document up. Do you need me to share the screen?
Well, I don't know if we can fit it at the same time as the mock draft, but
Probably
I'd be happy
not.
to.
So we'll leave the draft on and I'll just let you read. Go for it, my friend.
Sure thing. So if you guys want to read the rules, fantasynowplus.com/super-league-rules if you'd like to pull it up for yourself to follow along, but I'm going to read directly from the webpage. So this has a lot of crossover with the Scott Fishbowl rules, except it's not going to go crazy the way that Scott Fishbowl does. It is Superflex. You get 9 bench players. You start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 3 flex, and 1 superflex, and then a kicker. No trading is allowed, $100 fab budget. You get daily waivers that run at noon Eastern time every single day. Before I continue, I'm going to make my first couple of picks here. So we're going to go CeeDee Lamb and Ashton Genty because I'm feeling extra saucy today.
There you go.
So the weekly game goes against the league median as well, so that's also worth noting. I don't believe you can actually plan for that. I think that's more luck than anything else, but maybe you can come back at me in the comments and let me know if you disagree. So, there's some good rules to it, aside from no trading, like accidental drops, accidental picks. You know, contact a league commissioner if that happens to you, but I like to think we're all professionals here and we don't make mistakes like that. But if that happens, you know, we're kind. We're not mean about it.
I was going to say, let me interrupt just real quick because I like to use this show as a learning tool. I, in fact, in the last 2 weeks, made an accidental drop. I had actually already dropped players from a Dynasty Orphan that I took over. So I had open roster spots and I set up my waiver queue and somehow had it set up where even though I had to drop nobody, a player got dropped. I don't know where I misclicked. It was on MFL. Can be a little fidgety sometimes, but accidental drops do happen even to the best of us. But I emailed the commissioner immediately. I got my player back. It was Jalen Milroe in a Superflex league. Was not trying to cut this man.
Yeah, that would be a good hold to have. So it's also worth noting that this tournament will begin on Saturday, July 28th at 12 noon Eastern. It'll be a slow draft with an 8-hour pick timer. So this is going to start a little later after most Scott Fishbowls get started, but I know that some Scott Fishbowl will begin. The entire draft is going to be on Sleeper, just like what we've got right now. There's no MFL, unfortunately, Austin.
Oh, no, Austin's making fun of me for playing on MFL.
That's your MySpace account.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
It's fantastic. You're not in my top 5, Austin.
So then once we get to the scoring settings, as Ryan pointed out, what he liked the most about this is that this is overloaded with bonuses.
Yes.
And bonuses, I think, at least I think, are much more harder to plan for, and it adds to the extra excitement, which may or may not be changing your draft strategy. So being that kickers are going to be included, before I finish that thought, I'm going to go ahead and make my next couple of picks here.
Third round reversal snuck up on you there. So.
Yes, it did.
Only one pick you got to worry about. So, this is a third round reversal tournament. If you guys are completely new to third round reversal, what happens is the first 2 rounds go off exactly how every other fantasy draft you've ever played in goes off. But then the third round goes back to the person who had the 12th pick in the first round. It's basically a way of further helping out the team that was so far away from the first pick of the draft.
Yes. So I'll go over the noteworthy scoring settings here. So, passing stats rewards players for their performances. So if your quarterback gets it's a 6-point passing touchdown league, and if your quarterback gets anywhere between 300 to 399 yards, it's an extra 2 points. A 400 plus passing yard game or more is an extra 3 points. 25 or more completions is 5 points. So you're going to get crazy bonuses for a big passing day. So if you love yourself some Joe Burrow, I think that's going to increase his value, being that he tends to get more of those bigger games. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I saw this, Joe Burrow was one that came out, but then you look at a lot of the teams, the high volume teams, because of the bonuses at completions, Austin, it seems like even though it's only 50 yards to a passing point, there's still some benefits to getting those quarterbacks who will throw, 40 passes for 220 yards. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're getting 5 points once you hit that 25 completion mark, that's a huge jump, especially because it's not ratcheting up each time. I think that's one thing that Scott Fishbowl will do, is that for each completion, there will be like a marginal fractional point. And that definitely caters towards those guys that pass more. But this in particular, I think it's not just about overall passing volume, but it's like a nice safe floor. Like if you have a guy that's consistently getting that 25 points, I mean, that's going to be a game changer over the course of the season.
Yeah, high volume passing offenses, like you mentioned, Joe Burrow could be a great one in this one, Evan.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key to drafting all of your players, is that every single position has 50-yard bonuses. So there's a 50-yard passing touchdown bonus, 50-yard rushing touchdown bonus, and a 50-yard receiving touchdown bonus. So if you've got those deep threats or those boom-bust running backs like a Saquon Barkley to play, that may or may not be influencing your decision on when to take certain guys.
Yeah, and as you move into the running backs, I noticed there's some points when you hit carry volume inside of running backs as well.
Yes, so as we move into the next category, 10 rushing yards is 1 point. Rushing first downs are 1/4 of a point, 0.25.
Yeah.
100 to 199. I'm recovering from a cold. I'm still getting used to talking with it. 100 to 199 yard rushing game is 2 points. 200 plus yard rushing game is 3 points. 20 or more carries is also 3 points. So even if you got a bell cow that takes 20 carries and only gets 99 yards, you're still going to get 3 points.
Well, and plus first downs kind of coincide with volume and carries. And so I feel like that's another great bonus when you look at that one.
And that's exactly why I took Genty and Henry as my first 2 running backs, because even though Genty's a rookie, I can't see who the heck else the Raiders are going to be running behind Genty to take away his volume.
It's been my take as well. I just took him in the first round of a mock that we're doing for a Club Fantasy show later on this week as well. So
as we get into the receiving stats, so 10 receiving yards is 1 point. You have your receiving touchdowns and 2-point conversions. Receiving first down is also 1/4 of a point. A reception bonus for a running back is 1.25 points, as well as a tight end is 1.5 points. So there's a running back and tight end premium for catches. So fire up your Alvin Kamara's, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I've been calling this staggered PPR, and I'm starting to notice a lot more leagues doing this, just trying to balance things out in the PPR field.
Absolutely, and you absolutely have to do that, because there are a lot of running backs that can get good catches, but then just don't really get anywhere after the catch, and that matches guys like Chase Brown, where, I mean, he may get some catches every now and then. He doesn't get a ton of targets, but being that he doesn't really get anywhere after the catch, I like that the extra 1/4 of a point kind of helps balance things out.
Absolutely, and then there's one more position we have to talk about, because there's some great bonuses in this league that includes kickers.
Ooh, baby, and my favorite position. But before I do that, I'm going to make my next pick here.
Oh, yeah.
So that I'm not super
I'll
duper
actually
distracted.
take over while we're talking kickers because I love the way they set up kickers. And it was in the chat, Justin Bowerly, I believe, if I'm gathering everything right, runs Fantasy Now Plus, right? And is the organizer of this tournament.
Correct.
Perfect. I mean, because he mentioned where people were kind of not being so nice to kickers in the chat. He said, if you do kicking scoring right, kickers can be fun. And I think this is a very interesting way of doing kicking scoring. You get 3 points for making the field goal, but you also get points, a 1/10 of a point per yard. So right away, I'm going to use a 50-yard field goal, but 50-yard field goals get a lot more interesting as well. Right away, a 50-yard field goal is worth 8 points because you got 3 points for the made field goal and the yardage bonus. But then a 50-yard made field goal also gets a 5-point bonus. So now a 50-yard field goal is a 13-point kick. And if they make it from 60, they get another 5 points, making a 60-yard field goal an 18-point kick, which I don't know of many other plays in fantasy football, Evan, that can get us 18 points.
No, and it sounds insane when you say it from a top level perspective.
And I'm actually wrong about 18 because we had to add the points for the 60. It's a 19-point kick.
Yes. Yeah, and like I was saying, it still doesn't change the fact that it sounds insane when you put it that way, but the kickers score the most points in NFL football. They are not as fun when you're a fantasy analyst because you can't accurately analyze kickers just because there's so much game script that's involved in them, but kickers are one of the most important positions in football, even though a lot of us hate them. But your kicker is going to make or break your team. So choose wisely, folks.
I am not a kicker hater, so I am very, very happy to hear the love the kickers are going. And Evan, again, early on in this show, there's not a lot me and Austin can contribute because it's all about your tournament. So the next thing I want to get into is the actual charity aspect around Super League. So let people know, I know it's Fantasy Now Plus, but let them know, more importantly, where they can sign up and how it benefits charity.
Absolutely. So going to fantasynowplus.com, you'll see Super League right there at the top. There are 3 options in that pull-down menu between registration, and then once you register and you get accepted via email, you have to go to the draft selection page, which is the second link in there, and you have to choose where you want to draft in the particular league that you want. Right now, we have 1 league remaining at the moment, which is the Captain Hook League. We have a grand total of 10 more spots right now. Okay. So if you're thinking of wanting to play for charity, first things first, well, let me actually tell you all a little bit about the charity. Maybe that'll help you decide a little better. So Super League helps benefit the Extra Life charity organization, which is benefiting the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, which helps out families deeply in need where, let's be honest, folks, if you need healthcare in the United States, it sucks. It's horribly expensive. And there are children, unfortunately, out there that have horrible diseases that have insane costs at the hospital. And it's not fair to shoulder the burden on regular Americans like us, but somebody's got to be helping these folks out because it's just not fair, and that's where Extra Life comes in to help benefit the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So a donation will help solidify your way into Super League, but it's also greatly appreciated either way. These are families that really need the help with their kids.
Yeah, I love that. I saw that charity and it was easy for me when you invited me to sign up that I was like, yeah, that's one I definitely want to be involved with. So it sounds like 10 spots left, guys. We got a lot of people in the chat saying they just signed up today. Jamie playing with the Captain Hook. He says bangarang. Let's get Jamie in there if we can. I also want to give a shout out to Josh, who said he's multitasking while watching Love Island. We have been getting yelled at by so many people recently that we are always on when the NBA finals or the NBA playoffs are on. Vince Mapstone said he had to watch the Pacers game tonight. And actually, Justin said the same exact thing, that he had to co-watch with the NBA finals, but we got NBA finals and Love Island going on while we are mock drafting. I think that's a first for our show. So shout out to Roto Not There. Guys, if you've never tuned into a Club Fantasy mock draft show before, you're about to learn that I do not do a lot of recaps of this draft. Again, the mock draft goes on in the background. We see what we can learn from the mock draft. So we're going to talk about the interesting picks, but every episode, I definitely like to break down the first 3 rounds because I think the first 3 rounds of the draft kind of help determine your strategy. They determine how your team is going to kind of look. And it's always good to know who's going in the early picks of a Superflex mock draft that is tight end premium. But the tight end premium drafts have all been going the same way, and you can never tell by a draft board that it's tight end premium. More on that in a second. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. The first pick of the draft was Josh Allen. Jaden Daniels was 2. Lamar Jackson was 3. This is a super flex draft, meaning you can start 2 quarterbacks, so you're going to see a lot of quarterbacks go early. Jamar Chase at the 4, Joe Burrow at 5, Jalen Hurts at 6, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Brock Bowers rock out 7, 8, and 9. Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and CeeDee Lamb were the last picks of the first round. Evan had the final pick. He took CeeDee Lamb and then moved on to Ashton Genty. We have Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian McCaffrey, Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, Devon Achane, Drake London, Trey McBride, Nico Collins, Bo Nix, and Justin Herbert round out the second round. But the person who took Justin Herbert does not have the next pick because it is third round reversal. That goes all the way back to Evan, who grabs Derrick Henry. And then we got Josh Jacobs, Baker Mayfield, Ladd McConkey, Patrick Mahomes, Bucky Irving, A.J. Brown, Kieran Williams, Drake May, T. Higgins, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Jonathan Taylor. As always, Austin, when I look at these first rounds, I like to ask you, do you see anything interesting? The first thing I want to point out is it is a super flex draft. 5 of the first 6 picks are quarterbacks. And then nobody takes another quarterback to the 211, which is pretty wild to me, Austin. But does that surprise you or any other picks surprise you right now?
Yes, that surprises me significantly. The other thing that surprised me about how long it took for quarterbacks 6 and 7 to go is that it was Bo Nix and Justin Herbert, and then Baker Mayfield, and then Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Like, what? Did I literally, as this draft was happening, I was sitting here thinking and Googling, did I miss some sort of news? Did Patrick Mahomes break his leg during OTAs and just was out for the season and we're just going to see him drop for no reason? No, couldn't find anything. So I took him in the 3rd round as my QB1 after I get 2 stud picks in the first couple of rounds. I don't totally get what's happening there. That was the thing that surprised me the most. If it weren't for that, I'd be yelling about Jalen Hurts dropping behind Joe Burrow. Yeah, I get it. Joe Burrow with the 6-point passing touchdown, that does help him out a ton. But I think people are forgetting that Jalen Hurts still runs the ball and the tush push wasn't banned. I feel really comfortable having him up in my top 4 quarterbacks. And to me, if I had taken Joe Burrow with the 5th pick and then saw that I could have taken Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd round, I would be feeling a little bit frustrated right now. I don't know that that's actually going to happen when you go to do this draft in real life. This doesn't compute with how Superflex is typically played, but maybe the scoring settings has gotten people more interested in the positional players than the quarterbacks.
And Evan, this is something I spent some time on in the last mock draft because I have noticed in all my years of mocking Scott Fishbowl drafts that people are really willing to punt quarterbacks in Superflex in mock drafts. But then when the draft actually happens, everybody gets really scared of making that. So, Evan, do you foresee that this year, because almost every Superflex mock I've been a part of has been punting quarterbacks. Do you foresee that maybe this is the year that people are more willing to do that?
No, I don't think it's anything that's necessarily global, and I can't speak on the way that Super League is going to go down just because this is also my first year doing this tournament, and I haven't seen it for myself before, but I am definitely somebody who likes to punt at quarterback in Superflex because I like to get my studs at the other positions first, the wide receiver, running back, and tight end positions first, because you just can't miss out on guys like that. And granted, I look at somebody like what Brian's got in the first draft position where he went and grabbed Josh Allen and Justin Herbert right away, and having Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, and then punting at wide receiver is also not a bad strategy. I actually agree more with punting at wide receiver than quarterback.
Yeah. And we tend to see that, Austin, especially for those of us who do best ball drafts. There's so many good receivers, and in a best ball draft, you have to draft so many of them. I did want to point out that Super League is a 20 roster spot draft, but we are only going to be drafting 16 because, again, my goal is always to get this show done in an hour. But Austin, how do you feel about that? Where in the first round anyway, our first 3 rounds rather, it looks like, quickly off the top of my head, 16 wide receivers out of 36 draft picks. So it's a pretty heavy tilt towards wide receiver when you throw in the fact of how many quarterbacks went in those same rounds.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that makes sense to some degree. I do feel like there are enough bonuses on the quarterback side. Like they're still going to be relevant. I feel like, to me, when I'm looking at this, I feel like we're overthinking the reduction in points for passing yards, because the elite quarterbacks are going to consistently be getting enough pass volume as well to pay off of that. And the rushing quarterbacks in particular, they're getting the bonuses for the running aspect of this as well, with the rushing first downs, the rushing attempts. So I feel like it actually offsets pretty well, to the point that I'm not drafting terribly differently than I would be in a typical Superflex league.
And I think, Austin, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier for my next topic on the show, because it is not someone we have spent a lot of time on this year, or even probably the last 2 years. But I do think we need to have a little bit of a discussion about Patrick Mahomes. And Alec defended his pick, saying that he puts Baker on the same level, if not better, for fantasy football, and that's why he took him over Mahomes. So, Austin, if you don't mind, I know you questioned it earlier on. Can we expound a little bit? Like, Patrick Mahomes had, quote unquote, a down year. I think he was the QB8 in most fantasy scoring last year. But it does seem that the fantasy community has really flipped from this guy being a perennial top 3 pick to now we're not even sure that we want him.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I take the point about the that Josh put as well, about the reduction in the points per yard for a quarterback. I come back to, I mean, first off, coming back to this league specifically, you get 5 bonus points every time you get 25 completions or more. Patrick Mahomes did that 10 times last year.
Oh, wow.
Justin Herbert did that 3 times. Or sorry, no, Justin Herbert did that 7 times. I'm mixing up players. He did that
3 fewer than Mahomes. So.
Oh no, I was right the first time. He did it 3 times last year. Justin Herbert did that 3 times last year. Okay, so that's 7 times less than Mahomes. Bo Nix did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times last year. That's still 3 fewer than Mahomes. Baker Mayfield, same deal, 7 times last year. Still 3 fewer than Mahomes. So that is a wild amount of points. That's like, those are real points that Patrick Mahomes is getting over those guys just by being consistent on that front. And I think that's the thing that keeps me coming back to Mahomes, is the offense is still him. He's still running through him over and over again. Sure, last year was a down year. Passing volume was down. They slow things down. They run the ball. I get it. There's a lot that is going against him. I just think that when you start getting to the point where you're putting somebody like Justin Herbert, who has fucking John Harbaugh as his coach, why is that the case? Like, why is he going ahead of Mahomes? We see Los Angeles as a run-heavy, run-oriented offense. That should mean that Herbert is going closer to Mahomes than, not vice versa. And so I think, to me, like, I see a lot of both and here. It makes sense that Mahomes is going down because the fantasy environment is less favorable to him, but he also still has the ridiculous ceiling. And there are other players who are in similar environments and similar situations, but we're giving the benefit of the doubt over the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, Evan, just to compound on that, it seemed like last year we saw some really, really good passing years out of players like Baker Mayfield, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns. I'm not going to question what Joe Burrow did. Joe Burrow puts those numbers up. Jared Goff, 4,600 yards, 37 touchdowns. Bo Nix bursts onto the scene, 37 and 29. It kind of overshadows that Mahomes didn't have a terrible year. 3,926 touchdowns. And with the people around him, you should see Rashee Rice back. He still has Travis Kelce, who is also not dead. I would like to point out, like, when you look at Kelce's numbers in the tight end landscape, they're not that bad. And we can probably talk about that when we get to these middle round picks. But do you think, Evan, that the fantasy community is overdoing it on Patrick Mahomes? Or do you think the bump down that we're seeing in his value is warranted?
Listen, I can understand why people are getting sour on Patrick Mahomes, because we were getting spoiled with 2021 and 2022 when he was throwing over 600 times in those years before Tyreek Hill left to go to the Miami Dolphins. And now that he doesn't have his Tyreek Hill stud wide receiver anymore, because the Chiefs keep getting guys that can't stay out of trouble, can't stay healthy. So the game changes a bit for guys like Patrick Mahomes. Before I finish that point, let me make my next couple of picks here.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're up for back-to-back picks.
Boop and boop.
And to Austin's point, Actually, you made your 2 picks. Go ahead. I'm not going to hold you off anymore.
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes has Matt Nagy as his offensive coordinator. And here's what people need to know when Matt Nagy is your offensive coordinator. Running back draw plays, wide receiver flat routes. Some of the most bland, vanilla, boring, predictable play calling you could ask for. I don't get why Andy Reid likes this guy, because Patrick Mahomes was turned into an expensive game manager, and they ran the ball a lot more, like what was pointed out. So, no, Patrick Mahomes, I think we just got spoiled with somebody like him throwing over 600 times, but yeah, the offense is a little bit worse, and the offensive coordinator is not good for somebody like Patrick Mahomes, but he's still going to be a top quarterback that you just can't ignore. And Justin Herbert, on the other hand, threw for 504 times, which is not as much as somebody like a Mahomes has done, but that's not nothing in a Jim Harbaugh offense where everybody's going, oh, it's going to be run first, oh, but here's the thing, too. Justin Herbert rushed for 69 times, nice, and he can take off with the football when he needs to. He took a career high of 41 sacks because that offensive line is terrible, but getting Joe Alt protecting his blind side is at least a good start. So Justin Herbert getting a lot of hype, well, I don't know if I can make a case for drafting him over Patrick Mahomes, but all I'm going to say is I understand.
But like to your point on that though, like Patrick Mahomes can run the ball too, and for him getting more protection, the thing that we know about Mahomes is he's the type of guy that typically quarterbacks want a really nice, solid interior of the offensive line, and they'll deal with lesser play on the outside because they feel like, okay, they can mitigate pressure that way. Patrick Mahomes is literally the exact opposite. And the worst situation that they had on their offensive line last year was left tackle. And so it was also like a down year for the offensive line in the ecosystem for Patrick Mahomes. So to me, I'm like, you fix that, all of a sudden you're getting at least back regress to 2023 when, things weren't like lighting the world on fire, but they were still manageable, especially in a 6-point passing touchdown league. Now, if we didn't have that here, I could understand a little bit more of further downgrading Mahomes, but with 6-point passing touchdowns, improved offensive line, improved offensive weapons, like Mahomes should be totally fine this year.
And I agree that he can absolutely take off and run with the football when he can, but last year he was definitely still playing through that ankle injury, and I think he was very, very hesitant to do so. You could tell it was still hurting him out there, and he was playing through it all.
I'm allowed to say this because of how I look. He also had the dad bod thing going on, so hopefully we see him in camp a little bit better in shape this year. Just throwing it out there as someone who has rocked the dad bod for years. I want to see Patrick Mahomes looking better in a bikini than I do. Like, I think we all deserve that in fantasy football.
Whoa, now. Hold on.
A couple of quick reminders, folks. I leave the top half of the draft up for most of the show, so you guys can kind of like see these picks while we talk about some of these picks. Also, see a lot of new faces in the chat. If you guys have not hit that like and subscribe button, we would very much appreciate if you did. We are slowly growing towards 1,400 subscribers. Every time you guys hit the like button, more people get to see us. We get a little bit more of that Google money. Really just trying to pay some bills around here, folks. So help us out. Hit like, hit subscribe, drop your comments if you believe in what these guys are saying, or if you want to fight with us, we're happy to hear about it. I want to talk about another offense. And Evan, I'll start with you on this one because it's a division rival for you. And I'm honestly shocked I haven't fit this into a show at all yet. Jared Goff goes as I literally just saw it and now I've lost it. Vince Mapstone takes him in the 4th round. The Detroit offense loses Ben Johnson, and I feel like people are 50-50 torn on nobody seems to be that concerned about it or the sky is falling. Where is your take on Detroit when it comes to the loss of Ben Johnson, who seemed to be a key cog in bringing that offense into hyper fantasy relevance?
So honestly, Ryan, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's a happy medium. I don't think he is. I don't think he's going to take a major step down, and I don't think the offense is going to take a major step down either. I think that Jared Goff is going to do fine, and every Lions fan that I've heard from, they're not as mad about Ben Johnson losing him because, I mean, they knew that he was going to leave to take a head coaching job somewhere else for a long time now. They're just mad about losing Antoine Randall.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I don't think that the Lions offense is going to suffer all that much. I can't remember who replaced Ben Johnson in Detroit. I mean, as well as Aaron and Glenn on the defensive side. But
Can't
the
remember
Lions
kid's
are
name, but he was with Ben Johnson 2 years ago in Detroit as the passing game coordinator, and he was the passing game coordinator in Denver last year, and then came back to be the offensive coordinator.
Still have no idea who that is, but yeah, I will believe you. But anyway, to summarize my point, I am still worried about the Detroit offense because they have a lot of talent, and Dan Campbell is still a very respectable head coach. He's a live by the sword, die by the sword guy, so he is beatable, but this is still a team to reckon with, even if their secondary might have a lot of question marks.
Yeah, and it could be the Cincinnati Bengals syndrome where a bad defense could still play out really, really well for the offense. Austin, our castmate over at Club Fantasy, Josh Hudson, was the one who really was painting the sky is falling narrative when it comes to the Detroit Lions and has them like way down in his rankings. But he did say he feels like the two superstars, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, are going to be fine. He's actually just way lower on Jared Goff. What are your thoughts?
But the one thing before I let you answer that, Austin, is that I don't want to say Detroit does not have a bad defense. They just have a Swiss cheese secondary. Okay, so that's the one thing I want to make clear. Go ahead, Austin. Perfect. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, Josh and I often disagree on a lot when it comes to fantasy football. And I'll just point out that of the two of us, I am the one that has actually won in our fantasy redraft league. So I think that means that you should trust me, which I am not as low on the Lions this year as Josh is. I do think it is worth going through the thought process of what does it look like not having Ben Johnson there? What does it look like not having Frank Reich now that he is retired, and like adjusting expectations based on that. So I don't want to say that Josh doesn't have a point that you should, test out that theory and go down that route. I just am not as far down on the Lions as he is. I think particularly where Goff is going in this league, like I freaking love that value. There's an easy scenario where Goff ends up finishing ahead of CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, and Kyler Murray. And I think to your point, Evan, about alluding to the head coaching situation in Detroit, that is the thing that matters to me. Who picked Ben Johnson to be the offensive coordinator? It was Dan Campbell. And I trust Dan Campbell. That the type of head coach he is, he's not the one calling plays. He's not the one running the defense. He is a CEO style head coach. His job is to pick other good coaches to set that team up for success and to set a culture of winning. And that is what he is still there doing that. And so because of that, I feel good betting on the Lions again. Now, I might not be drafting them at the ADP that we got them at in 2024, but I feel comfortable drafting Lions players in general, especially if I'm getting them at a suppressed ADP.
Do either one of you guys think that, so Jahmyr Gibbs falls to the RB3 in this draft, and Austin, you took Bijan Robinson at 1. Are either one of you comfortable taking Saquon Barkley or any other number of running backs over Jahmyr Gibbs the way they went in this draft, Evan?
Taking Saquon Barkley over Gibbs, I can certainly see a case for it.
Or other running backs as well. Like, is there anybody else you're putting ahead of him? Like, you got Genty 2 picks later.
Yeah. Well, I think Bijan Robinson is going to become the new de facto 101 for when it comes to running backs. I see a lot of rankings putting Bijan over Saquon this year. I think a lot of people are scared to trust in an older Saquon where he's not going to repeat the volume that he got in Philly, where he got a grand total of 345 carries for 2,005 yards. Yeah. People are going, oh, he's not going to do that again. Fade him. But if he does it again, what are these folks going to do? I mean, I could certainly see a case of still taking Barkley over Bijan if you like him that much better, but I still would rather have Bijan over Barkley.
Okay. I think that's fair as well. But I want to ask though, are there any other backs besides those two you would consider over Gibbs?
Sorry about that. Missed that part. Honestly, no.
Stick with the Detroit offense thing.
No, I still have Barkley as a top 3 running back. I cannot, in good faith, put anybody else over Barkley, even if I'm fading him from having another 2,000-yard season. Who the heck is going to stop him? He decides that. He even said that his retirement could come abruptly, just to tease people.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the whole curse of 370 and everyone's freaking out about Barkley. Austin, same sort of question. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown seem like the safest options. You obviously took Bijan. If Bijan was gone, is Gibbs your pick there, or would you put any other running backs ahead?
I think Gibbs is likely my pick. I would consider, similar to Evan, I would consider Saquon Barkley just because the ceiling is really there. But I do think there's going to be significant regression that hits Saquon Barkley. But to your broader point of outside of Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley, are there any guys that I'm considering over Jahmyr Gibbs? No. And this is particularly where I disagree with Josh on this because he's got Devon Achane ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs.
And Christian McCaffrey, I believe.
Yeah, which is like, okay.
Maybe not McCaffrey, but I know he does have Achane. You're absolutely right. So,
and those are two guys that I'm like not certain they're going to play 17 games. So particularly Devon Achane. Devon Achane is an undersized running back as it is. He played only 11 games his rookie year. He played all 17 last year. I'm a little worried that we're about to see some injury regression come for Devon Achane. And so because of that, like if I have to pick a running back in the top three, it's going to be one of Robinson, Barkley, or Gibbs. And it's going to most likely be Gibbs ahead of Barkley more times than not.
Perfect. Guys, let's take a look at the middle rounds. And I think this is something we need to talk about. I spent a lot of time on this on the show last week, and I didn't really talk about the middle round guys. So I want to look at these tight ends. So even though this is tight end premium, we had 2 tight ends go in the first 2 rounds. And that's kind of been the way it goes for all tight end premium drafts to this point that I've been a part of. There were a couple of other 3, to be precise, scattered tight ends. And then the 8th round happened, and we had a tight end run started by Austin, ended by Evan. We're going to talk about that. Mark Andrews and Tyler Warren both go in the 8th round. And then Austin kicks this run off with Travis Kelce, followed up then, not by Austin, but Shia going Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Jonnu Smith. Evan, you double tap tight end. And then 2 picks later is Zach Ertz. So where I want to go with this, Evan, is this the way to attack tight end premium now? Because it seems like it's very similar, especially for you, Evan, on how some are attacking Superflex. And that is waiting and double tapping in the mid round. And Austin, we're spending a lot of time talking about both of your teams, but that's just the way this show goes. Sometimes you guys have made the most interesting picks, in my opinion. But Evan, I want to come back to you. Is this maybe the better way to start attacking tight end premium, is loading up in the middle rather than spending a lot of high picks? Because we'll see people, it didn't happen in this draft, who will make tight ends 3 of their first 5 picks in tight end premium drafts.
I don't think there's one way to do it right when it comes to tight end premium. Ultimately, I think there are differing opinions on that matter. You're going to have your best ball bros who are going to act like that tight end doesn't matter because there's only like 5 of them that get super great points and then everybody else is a dart throw. And then you have people like me who recognize that the average anywhere between 9 to 12 tight ends every year average 10 fantasy points or more per year, which is not nothing. And that's why you don't want to punt at tight end necessarily. But in a format like this where it's super flex, I'm just going to put quarterback a little higher over the tight end just because there are more quarterbacks that score higher double-digit points just because they have the ball in their hands the most. But at the same time, I don't necessarily like to go for the jugular when it comes to quarterback because there are only 32 quarterbacks worth starting. The first 20 are going to be guys that are worth starting, and the remaining 12 of them are dart throws. So I don't like to go crazy on quarterback for that reason. Let me get my wide receivers, let me get my running backs, and then I'll worry about everybody else after that. And it's the same thing with tight end here, where Tucker Kraft, Colston Loveland, I'll take my chances on those guys. I don't have to reach on somebody like a TJ Hawkinson, who I'm not that high on anymore, and maybe even a Travis Kelce, who is looking like he's regressed, but he's still a top tight end as far as I'm concerned.
Say be careful now, but yeah, I agree. Definitely, I'll allow regression, but I think he is still a top tight end. We just did our tight end show on Club Fantasy this past week. Spoke very highly of Tucker Kraft. So I think that was an excellent pick this late in the draft. Austin, I'm going to jump over to your team because in a tight end premium, I think a dream scenario is walking away with George Kittle and Travis Kelce. You had to have been happy with how that fell in your lap. Not to mention, with you being a best ball guy, you got your stack of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce there. So
yeah, I was about to say, Evan, I am one of those best ball bros.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but I know value when I see it. So I knew that Travis Kelce was worth taking the second tight end at that point because come on, in the 8th round, like, am I really going to take a dart throw? If I have to take a dart throw on Travis Kelce, like, yeah, twist my arm. I'll do that any day of the week. getting to pair those two tight ends together and getting them in the 4th and 8th round is just absolutely wild to me. So, it's not really a strategy that I tend to take on purpose where I'm like doing the double tight end world. I've been burned by that enough times, regardless of the format, that I tend to shy away from it. But this was a situation where just the value was so good and it was so obvious to do it at that point that I thought, yeah, no problem. Worst case scenario, Travis Kelce's my backup tight end.
Yeah, and I liked what you did here, Austin, by getting Kittle followed up by Kelce, because now you're set at tight end here, and you didn't wait on tight end the way that I did. You knew better because you recognize that tight ends do matter in this game, where I've just seen a lot of, not just best ball bros, but DFS bros that are just like, stick in the $2,500 cheap guy on DraftKings. Who cares about tight end? Where, no, man, you got to care about it, especially in a premium format like this. But yeah, I like Kittle for the 49ers. I think he's going to be the guy.
Evan taking inadvertent shots at the host of Club Fantasy's DFS show, Ryan Weisse and Austin Amandolia.
Yeah, it's cool. You're literally talking about me in the show. I'm like, every week we do the DFS show. I'm like,
he punts it tight end.
The cheapest tight end. Ryan would be like, is this the week where we play Brock Bowers? I'm like, nope. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I'm always the one who has to introduce Brock Bowers to the show. I do want to throw Alec up on the screen. And Alec is the one who's been really talking about sometimes 1.5 tight end, and we're not poking fun at Super League, but sometimes 1.5 for a tight end isn't enough of a premium. I always say that the problem with mock drafting tight end premium is there is no tight end premium setting in mock drafting. So I always wonder if that's what keeps their value depressed. But it's just interesting that a lot of people will ask when we start these mock drafts, is it tight end premium? And I'll say, we can call it tight end premium, but it is literally going to change nothing. I do think Superflex is the biggest draft changer of anything that we do, Evan.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the show. I am a Superflex hater. I think it is a hastily put together. Yes, I think it's a hastily put together slot that tries to solve a problem poorly, where I still view it as like a black and white issue, just because quarterbacks are overvalued in this format all the time, because I think a lot of common folks don't recognize that just because a guy has the ball in his hands the most doesn't mean he's the most important guy on the field. You need your receivers, you need your runners, and I think that's why I like to go wide receiver and running back over anything else. Now, that being said, you don't want to be stuck with somebody like Sam Darnold over somebody like Jaden Daniels. That's important distinction to make. But I think the actual way to solve that problem is either be a 2-quarterback league or make quarterbacks less valuable so that they don't feel as weighted above other positions.
Well, and that's one thing I've always likened, and we talked about this last week with Warrior Bowl, and it was one of the first time I ever played in it was Scott Fish Bowl 12, is penalize turnovers and incompletions, so that way bad quarterbacks aren't the good de facto for that super flex spot for some teams. It makes way more sense to start another good position than a bad quarterback. And so I agree. There are better ways to handle Superflex than just saying, let's make quarterbacks more interesting by giving you the ability to start 2 of them.
And there are some good quarterbacks that might just have a bad completion game, where somebody like, who was the last Raiders quarterback? Aiden O'Connell. I've seen Aiden O'Connell outperform some of the studs in like one given week. So that's also something to keep in mind. I like your idea, Ryan.
Yeah, not my idea. Just something I latched onto when Scott penalized quarterbacks, and it is the way we do things in the Club Fantasy Redraft League. I penalize the hell out of quarterbacks. Interceptions are -4 points. That's just how I latched onto it. I loved it. Every week, guys, I like to play a game of Keep Trade Cut. I go through the ADP. I try to find some interesting stuff. I've been doing a lot of quarterback and tight end questions lately, so I wanted to move over to the running backs, and there are 2 running backs going in middle rounds that I find to be arguably one of them to be, in my opinion, the best value in fantasy football right now. So if you watched our show this past week, you know who I'm about to talk about. But there are 3 running backs that were all going near each other. They did not necessarily go near each other in this draft. So you guys know how Keep Trade Cut goes. You've been on the show before, Evan. You know I'm going to make Austin go first. Austin, I want you to keep trade cut DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, and Tony Pollard, who were all right next to each other in ADP. However, Aaron Jones went in the 7th round of this draft, whereas Swift went at the 9-8 and Pollard went at the 9-11. Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, keep trade cut. Austin.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep Aaron Jones. I'm gonna cut DeAndre Swift because I think that he's probably gonna get cut anyways, and I will trade Tony Pollard because I believe that there's some sicko out there that still thinks that Tony Pollard is a thing.
I hate you so much right now, Austin. I will comment after I let Evan answer. Evan, can you save the show? Keep, trade, cut.
Yes. I will keep DeAndre Swift, trade Aaron Jones, and cut Tony Pollard. I have seen the news about Aaron Jones being rumored to be a 1A, 1B with Jordan Mason. I think there's some validity to it. I don't believe that Aaron Jones is in his prime anymore. Don't get me wrong, I still think he's a solid running back, but he's not what he used to be. He's much older now. He's taken a lot of beatings over the years, and Jordan Mason has been rumored to take some goal line carries away from Aaron Jones. So I will gladly trade Aaron Jones for that reason. And DeAndre Swift does not appear to be getting replaced for this near term, for the short term. So over those two guys, yeah. I want nothing to do with the Tennessee offense. You're going to have to even beg me to take Calvin Ridley. I am out on the Titans offense this year.
I think
Austin?
Roshan Johnson has just entered the chat.
Okay.
Roshan Johnson is disappointing, unfortunately. I think Ben Johnson can squeeze the last amount of effort out of him for some like goal line carries, but DeAndre Swift appears to be the guy. There's no indication that there's going to be a committee that's going to happen with Kyle Monangai, Travis Homer, and Roshan Johnson and DeAndre Swift. Swift, I haven't read anything yet that's going to take him away.
The chat is pissing me off so much right now. Just co-signing Austin's nonsense. Austin, I'm going to call you out in a second, but Vince Mapson says he believes it's Travis Homer's season and it's time to cut Swift. Jamie says Roshan Johnson 101. Austin, I could not, you and I don't want to say we think alike often, but we don't tend to vehemently disagree. I love DeAndre Swift. I went on a 2.5-minute diatribe in our Chicago Bears episode. I believe DeAndre Swift is the best value in fantasy football right now. Hands down, nobody close. They invested nothing at running back. He has played and caught a ton of balls under Ben Johnson. Right now I have DeAndre Swift as a top 20 running back that is typically going outside of the top 30 in drafts. I guess where is this cut coming from? They're not going to cut DeAndre Swift.
That's just me being
okay. I'm like, well, just because everyone's saying it in the chat now, but Vince did say he agrees with me. And
because everybody agrees with me that they should cut him. I mean, I don't see why they would just rely on DeAndre Swift. Roshan Johnson, solid running back. Kyle Monangai, solid running back. I think he could get meaningful touches. Travis Homer, whatever. He'll get some time during the preseason. You know, he'll get those 20 touches in the preseason, and we'll be like, oh, look, Travis Homer's still a thing. I do think that Roshan is actually like, if I could see him being a 1B to a 1A DeAndre Swift. And I feel like when we've seen DeAndre Swift try to be a lead back, a 3-down back, it has not gone well. He doesn't have good vision, and I don't see why that's going to change personally, just because Ben Johnson is suddenly there. Now, maybe he'll have some ceiling games. Makes him a great GPP player for DFS, since we're talking about DFS. Maybe a great basketball player, but in this type of league, miss me with DeAndre Swift. I'll rather get my solid reliability in Aaron Jones. When he gets hurt, I'll replace him. Cool. Problem solved. But DeAndre Swift, I'm going to get 3 points from him 1 week, 20 points from him the next week. And I hate those players in these types of leagues.
So the thing about DeAndre Swift is that he's definitely not going to be a 3-down back. He's just going to be a 2-down back. He will get his 2 downs, and then it'll either be Roshan or Monangai, maybe even Travis Homer Simpson on 3rd down. They're not going to bring Swift in on 3rd down. It depends on what play they call. I mean, if they want to check it down on like 3rd and 2, they might keep in Swift, but he's definitely not going to I don't think he's going to get goal line carries again this year either. That'll probably be Roshan. Now, that being said, Swift, I still think can finish in the top 20 if everybody stays healthy. Now, Monangai, we got to see what he has to offer in the preseason. I'm not ready to make a final claim on him yet.
I would love to. I should have signed in under the Club Fantasy StreamYard account so I could pull up Jamie's chat. That Swift would be a great backup to Roshan. And I could not agree more.
I guess all the disappointing stuff you're saying about Swift when he's a 3-down back, and I'm not going to contend that we haven't seen his efficiency drop. That's how I feel about Roshan Johnson. Is like he just hasn't been all that impressive to me. But like looking at Swift's numbers and knowing what this kid was, and over the last 2 years, 200 plus carries. The yards per carry plummeted last year, but I think that was an offensive line issue. And Chicago, I think, has put some effort into this offensive line. And all in all, I'm in on the Chicago offense. And I'm not just saying any of this because Evan's here with us and he's a big Bears guy. I love DeAndre Swift this year. I did not expect this to take over the entire end of the show and that we're probably not going to fit anything else in, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, guys. I do a keep trade cut every single week on this show. We do a new mock draft every single week on this show. So this is just my reminder. If you have not hit that subscribe button yet, why not? It's absolutely free. You help us out. You get notifications when we go live, which for this mock draft show is every single Friday, except we're about to take some Fridays off, but that's neither here nor there. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Do us a favor. Do yourself a favor. Though we've talked about your teams this entire mock draft, we are going to wrap this thing up. So I've had the back end of the draft up for people to go. This is a kicker draft, so you saw some kickers go there. But I'm going to give these guys the opportunity to break down their drafts. So Evan, we'll go ahead and start with you. You know the deal at this point. You can talk about as many players as you want or as few players as you want. We've already talked about some of your players. Yep. But most importantly, break down your draft strategy. And I'll ask the first question right from the start. Did you know going in you were going to punt quarterback, or were you going to let the draft tell you what you were going to do?
Yeah, that was my approach in this one. The draft also, the vibes that the draft was putting out there also confirmed that I'm going to punt at quarterback and tight end and see what I can do here. See what value I could get later after Kraft and Loveland. So I picked up the whole Jacksonville backfield just to see which one is going to stand out, and then I can drop two of them and pick up other running backs that somebody forgot. And then I took some dart throw wide receivers like a Matthew Golden, Trey Harris, and then Rashid Shaheed. I still think we'll get some decent targets for some flex-worthy consideration. And then because the kickers were starting to go, I figured I'll go Chase McLaughlin because I like that Tampa Bay offense, because Mike Evans is the reason why the Tampa Bay offense is so good, and I don't want to hear otherwise.
I don't think Austin will fight you on that, but I'm also a Mike Evans guy, so it works out really, really well. So, I like you said, I love that you said you were already getting the vibes from the draft, but you did want to come into this and see what late quarterback was going to look like. And you did what I always tell folks is, if you're going to go quarterback late, make sure you go with guys who aren't going to lose their job. We didn't really talk a ton about him. Any concerns with Tua Tagovailoa health, or is that something you've just put in the past?
I'm putting that in the past until something proves otherwise. I mean, we can't predict if Tua is going to take another shot to the head, and I'm not saying I'm banking on that either. We really don't want to see this guy take another one. But he is the starting quarterback for the Dolphins until the Dolphins say no more. So as far as I'm concerned, with the weapons that he's got between Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington and now Jonnu Smith, because I don't think he's going to get traded, this is a decent Dolphins offense backed up by Achane that will surprise some people on some weeks. I don't like Mike McDonald as a coach. I think he's terrible, but that's for Dolphins fan to fight me on.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about with your team is, you by far did the most robust RB strategy. You took 3 running backs far before anybody else in the league took 3 running backs. Again, that's just how the draft fell to you. Would you have been willing to take wide receivers there, or were running backs really your goal in those rounds?
I didn't want to go too heavy at wide receiver at first. I wanted to get my hero wide receiver and then get my running backs and then get a second wide receiver in Rashee Rice, assuming that he plays the whole season. And then being that quarterbacks were going so soon, that's when I knew I had to go grab my quarterbacks and my tight ends to take advantage of the tight end premium. And then everybody else after Loveland, like I already said, I'm just taking dart throws and seeing what sticks.
Perfect. Austin, you know the deal, my friend. We basically talked about the entire top of your draft, but feel free to talk about anybody. Brian Thomas Jr. falling to you at 2-5. I wanted to own up to something real funny before I let Austin talk here. I went back and watched our very early mock draft episode that we did in January, like before the playoffs had even started, after the season had ended. And it was me, Gator J, and Josh. And I was appalled that somebody took Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round. And since then, I've done my projections and I've come to grips with last season far better and love Brian Thomas Jr. So egg on my face if you decide to go back and watch an old episode of this show where for some reason I was mad someone took Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round of a draft, Austin.
Yeah, that's quite the take to have had.
That's a hill to die on right there.
So I tend to experiment in these mock drafts, and I have been really starting to test out how far I can push the 0/hero RB approach. And that's kind of what I did in this draft. Now I had a couple of auto picks along the way, which actually they played more of a role later in the draft, but I decided, I don't know, let's see how much I can fill up my roster before I take my second running back. I don't exactly
it was a while.
love. Yeah, it was a while, and I love most of my roster. I don't exactly love my RB2 situation. Now I will say the Jaden Higgins pick, I was actually trying to pick Trey Benson then, and I accidentally autoed, so that didn't work out. And I also didn't pick J.K. Dobbins on purpose, but whatever, fine dart throw. What if RJ Harvey isn't exactly what we think he's going to be? What if he ends up flopping a little bit and J.K. Dobbins has more of a role there? Like at that point in the draft, that's the type of thing you're doing anyways, is start throws. So like that feels worth it to me. So do I think I pushed it a little bit too far on the RB2 situation? Yes. However, I am also, I'm a couple injuries away from it being just fine, right? Yeah. If one of what we know that we know that Trey Benson will have some time because James Conner rarely, if ever, plays a full 17-game season. So we know Trey Benson, he's going to get a few games where he's one of my starting running backs. J.K. Dobbins, it's probably going to be a running back by committee. And again, we don't really know what RJ Harvey will actually be. I'm optimistic, but at the ADP situation between these two, I'd much rather take Dobbins. And then Braylon Allen, we saw him perform really well last year. Breece Hall has had some injury issues here and there, so there's a good chance he plays a role as an RB2. Najee Harris is on a 1-year contract, and so I think there is some intrigue there with maybe they use him more so this year and give their rookie time to get up to speed after they drafted Marion Hampton. Maybe they want to focus on Najee Harris this year, run him into the ground, give Hampton the time to get up to speed. So I don't mind how my team ended up punting running back as far as I did. I might have preferred to have gone a little bit earlier and gotten somebody like maybe Tyrone Tracy, I maybe an Aaron Jones even earlier than that. But part of what's happened too is when I got to the Travis Kelce spot, I was like, I kind of feel like I'm in a dead zone of running backs. I don't really like any of these guys. And that's why I kept punting it further and just said, well, let's see what happens. And having Pearsall and Egbuka didn't feel too bad to get those guys along the way to having Najee Harris be my RB2.
Egbuka was the pick I was going to question, Austin. Not that I don't love the kid, but it's a bit of a crowded offense. And with your need at running back, again, when I look at the running backs and whenever, I'm a big Travis Etienne guy. I don't know how you feel about him coming into this season. I'm a big Jaylen Warren guy in PPR formats. So I just don't know if you would have double tap running backs there, but you bring up that it was the running back dead zone, and I'm not going to beat this dead horse anymore. But if you would have took DeAndre Swift over Ricky Pearsall, I would have adored your team.
Jeez. Yeah, well, I didn't do that, did I?
Nope. I do want to, first of all, we have a question for Evan because there was a mix up in the draft where Jamie picked the wrong guy. And so Jamie ended up grabbing, he actually mentions who it is. He was going to take Derrick Henry over Drake London, but things didn't go that way. So Evan, he asks you if Henry wasn't there at your pick, which we will highlight your team, scroll back up to the top so the folks on the show can see what's going on. You took Henry at the 3-1. Do you have an idea of who your pick would have been if Derrick Henry wasn't there?
I didn't. I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, but at the same time, for me, I don't know off the top of my head who I would have taken. But let's just judge the players that went around him. I think I would have gone A.J. Brown over Ladd McConkey. I think I would have considered Josh Jacobs, considering that they love to run him into the ground because the Raiders tried to kill him, but they failed to do so. And the Packers gave him a decent load, and they did fine. But yeah, I love having Derrick Henry as my RB2. And Jamie, take that, buddy boy. That's what you get for talking all that smack about DeAndre Swift. You're gonna regret it when we get Swifty this year. Woo! Top 20 running back.
I didn't see who it was, but someone actually put up a picture of a Roshan Johnson jersey in the draft chat while we were all discussing this. So.
It was Jamie.
Oh, it was Jamie. I love the spirit. I love our drafters. You guys have been awesome. All you folks who tuned in the show. The show went long, so I'm not going to do the verses, but I did find this very interesting. My idea for the verses segment was going to be zero running back versus robust running back. Well, guess what? The zero running back drafter was Austin and the robust running back drafter was Evan. So I was going to pivot and just compare two teams in the middle, but we went over on my diatribe about DeAndre Swift. So that is going to bring this show to an end. Let me go ahead and get the draft off of the screen now. What a show. Thank you so much, Evan. Please, first and foremost, let everybody know where they can find you, what anything you might be working on right now. But far more importantly, let these folks know how they can sign up for Super League, the draft we just talked about.
Absolutely. In case you missed it at the beginning of the show, open up a web browser, go to fantasynowplus.com. You will find Super League in the top menu. Click on registration, sign up. We've got 10 more spots at the moment, 10 spots that have not yet been taken. Get on in. Get a donation into Extra Life to help benefit the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and that will give you a higher chance of taking one of those last 10 spots. But even if that's not your goal, the donation is still greatly appreciated because that goes to helping a lot of families with kids that have very expensive illnesses in America where healthcare should not be a luxury. So get that in. If you want to find me otherwise, just look at Fantasy Now Plus. We've got plenty of content going up on all social media, including YouTube. I've been making a ton of YouTube shorts for Fantasy Now Plus. And Optimus Fantasy on YouTube. I go live every single Monday night up until week 1 of the NFL draft. Monday night mock drafts with Evan. I'll be doing another Scott Fishbowl mock draft this coming Monday, so don't miss it.
And Austin, you've been dropping articles every Friday. So you got a piece out on Tyrone Tracy that you dropped last week. And then Jacoby Myers that just dropped earlier this morning.
Yes, I did do that. I kind of, my work life has been so busy. I forgot I did those things. So thank you for reminding me of the articles that I've been writing,
Absolutely,
Ryan.
buddy. That's what a good editor does.
I have another one coming up next week on Ted McMillan, who I've been on a journey with.
So forward to reading that article.
I've been on a journey with him this year, so you'll get to see the next phase of that journey next week. But also, make sure you join the Discord and be on the lookout for our summer school best ball podcast to come back up. And yeah, come show your best ball drafts. Also, you can come hang out with the Club Fantasy Baseball expert. We have some fantasy baseball content, and I am now beating Ryan in our fantasy baseball league as of this part of the episode. Yeah,
oh my God. Now I got to go look at my whole team. Everything's going wrong. Kodai Senga with a strained hamstring, ruining my season little bit by little bit, but that's neither here nor there. Folks, that is going to be the end of this show. If you guys didn't yet, hit the subscribe button. I hope we entertained you. We will be back most weeks with a new mock draft. However, we are likely off next week unless Josh and Austin and possibly a co-host figure something out. You might have a surprise episode next week. But if you don't have a surprise episode next week, we are back the 27th for sure with this show's first Scott Fishbowl mock of the year. So there's been a ton of them out there. We're going to finally get into the game. We are having one of my league mates who actually was on the show last year. Lewis Hall is going to come on. He was in the Club Fantasy Listener League. He was in my Scott Fishbowl Live last year. He's in my Scott Fishbowl Live again this year. He has a wonderful British accent. It is an episode that you will not want to miss. That is going to be our June 27th show in 2 weeks. And like I said, maybe you get a surprise episode next week. Maybe you don't. However, always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We will see you at the next mock draft.